Welcome to the Automotive Service Association's webinar on safety inspections and new safety technologies. I'm Bob Redding, ASA's Washington, D.C. representative, and will be the moderator today. We have an excellent group of panelists on our program this afternoon, and I believe you will glean a great deal in the areas of new vehicle safety technologies and periodic motor vehicle safety inspection programs. We'll have time for questions at the end, so please submit questions via the question box. Please provide your name and hometown if you don't mind. First, for background, let's do a quick overview of state safety inspection programs. In 1966, Congress passed the Highway Safety Act, which mandated states comply with the U.S. Department of Transportation Uniform Vehicle Safety Standards. By 1975, 31 states had PMVI programs. In 1976, the Highway Safety Act was passed by Congress, and it revoked the Department of Transportation's authority to withhold state highway funds because states did not comply with DOT vehicle safety standards. 10 states in a very short period of time repealed their inspection programs. Today, we only have 16 states with PMVI programs. Subsequent to these federal laws, multiple states have done important studies of their inspection programs. Pennsylvania and Missouri are two of those states. Studies comparing states with state programs versus states that do not have inspection programs. The studies are clear as to the value in preventing vehicle accidents, injuries, and deaths. Today's panelists will discuss new safety technologies, new ideas for inspection programs, and the value of these programs to vehicle owners. Our panelists are Douglas Campbell, President of the Automotive Safety Council, State Representative Madeline Dean of Pennsylvania, and Taylor Hill of Larson Service in Peabody, Massachusetts. Let's start first this afternoon with Doug Campbell. Doug became president of Campbell & Campbell Consulting and acquired the Automotive Safety Council as a long-term client in June of 2008 upon retiring from TRW after 22 years as vice president of engineering for the global occupant safety systems business. In his capacity at TRW, he oversaw all engineering activities for the inflatable restraint, seat belt, steering wheel, safety and security electronics, and lane keeping product lines with a budget of over $300 million and a staff of 2,200 people. Doug had a career as an engineering co-op student with GM, serving from 1969 to 1982, and held a variety of engineering and management positions. Doug earned a Bachelor of Science degree in Mechanical Engineering from Kettering University. He holds a Master of Science degree in Engineering, Design, and Economic Evaluation from the University of Colorado, and a certificate in International Business Studies from the American International Graduate School of Business. Doug has been chairman of various committees of the Automotive Safety Council, Society of Automotive Engineers, and the American Management Association. Doug, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be able to talk to you today. We'll just get right to it with the next slide. You know, safety has been evolving as you spoke earlier, and a lot of things have been good and a few things not so good. Effective safety improvements, electronic stability control, automatic emergency braking, rollover protection, dual out airbags that help prevent child injuries, along with putting children in the back seat. If you remember, in the middle 90s, we had an issue where the airbags were too powerful, and that's been corrected since then, and it's been very successful in preventing the injury to children that we're having for a while with airbags in the mid-90s. Some ineffective safety technologies, lane departure warning, which is in a lot of vehicles today. It buzzes when you depart the lane in which you are in, and it just irritates people to no end because it doesn't really serve the purpose it was intended. The real technology that will come out later is called lane keeping, which is much more effective. It doesn't buzz or bother you. It will just keep you in your lane until you decide to leave it on your own. The reason for that is that 40% of all fatal accidents have to do with the vehicle departing its intended lane than what it was hoping to do. And then something that's really disturbing is a number of states have been eliminating the motorcycle helmet law recently, Michigan being one of them, and the motorcycle fatalities now are spiking due to the fact that helmets are not required in some states now that used to require them. Next. Some other things that have plagued us and continue to do is airbag fraud. There's been the Department of Justice, along with Homeland Security, has prosecuted a number of Chinese vendors that have imported parts illegally to the United States, along with prosecution of repair companies that have used them, and other places that have used covers only instead of putting the entire airbag in, stuffing rags inside the cover instead of inflators, and using substandard parts. The government is actively pursuing prosecution of these types of activities, and we're pleased they are, because it certainly does nothing more than harm people and put a black eye on the safety industry. So those activities continue to go on. Next. Recalls. Obviously, you've all heard of the Takata airbag recall. It's an enormous issue, unprecedented, 64 million vehicles being recalled. It's caused NHTSA to look at things differently. They're currently relooking at what is determined as the definition of the life of a vehicle, where that's standard that is used by all manufacturers and safety part makers as to how a part should perform in the field and for how long. They are considering maybe mandating all airbags replaced after 10 years. We'll see if that happens or not. They've also required now the rental fleets do recall repairs before allowing the cars to be continued to be rented, which is a big change. And also the serial number documentation for many retail site that would repair a car with an airbag replacement has to be able to put that type of documentation, the VIN number and the serial number of the airbag, into it, so that we're able to track vehicles that have been recalled and inspected properly. So the Takata airbag recall is creating a real different thought process in the Department of Transportation, and may have other changes come because of it. Next. So what's going on? NHTSA, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, of course, then with the EPA have come out with their CAFE requirements. They were just reviewed again in August, where the law required them to go back to the industry and see if any changes needed to be made. And of course, that's a fight that's going on right now between the car manufacturers and the government, because the requirements are quite stringent and will eventually require 50 miles per gallon on fleet average in the near future. What's this driving, of course, is lightweighting. And then, in other words, as you know, the F-150 pickup truck is mainly aluminum now. I think you'll see other pickup trucks and other vehicles do a lot of aluminum inclusion. This includes structural components as well, in the firewall and other places, because weight has to be eliminated to get the fuel economy up with standard internal combustion engines. The law will also drive electric vehicles, battery-driven vehicles tremendously going forward also. So you'll see a big switch to hybrids and battery-driven vehicles over the next 10 to 15 years in order to meet these CAFE requirements. Another big change is the New Car Assessment Program, NCAP. The government put out their thoughts about what it will be earlier this year, and we do expect towards the end of the year for them to actually propose a new regulation changing NCAP that would take the 5-star rating program, where it just now gives you a frontal and side collisions 5-star, 4-star, whatever rating program, to include many other technology categories such as pedestrian protection, rear seat protection, headlights, automatic emergency braking, lane assist, and more. And those will eventually be into a rating system where the star rating then will be differentiating more where these technologies are included or not. And the government's whole goal here is to show a bigger differentiation to the buying public to which cars are safer than other cars. Another big change coming is V2V and V2I. That's the vehicle to vehicle or vehicle to infrastructure. The whole industry is working on DSRC boxes, which are dedicated short-range communication boxes, where one vehicle will communicate to another, and to smart street signs, smart street lights, smart anything that would do in the driver be able to see what's going on, and also talk to each other, where they are, how fast they're going, and whether or not they're stopping at a red light or not. The whole idea is for vehicles to know what other vehicles are doing so they can take counteractive measures to avoid accidents, such as running a red light or something along those lines. There's a big issue going on. Before I go on, there's been a 10,000 car study in Ann Arbor, Michigan over the last 5 years. It's been evaluating this, creating terabytes of data every day, which is allowing the manufacturers to tweak the technology and the software to make it work better. There are people proposing aftermarket boxes to be put on cars, the SRC boxes. Don't know how that's going to work, since if you don't have automatic emergency braking or other kinds of technology on your car, it will not work very well, because then the person has to engage that information and make decisions. And most people think that'll be quite confusing. Another issue there is the FCC, the 5.9 gigahertz frequency has been dedicated for this particular activity for the last 20 years, thinking ahead. But now the cell phone industry wants to improve and increase their bandwidth because they're running out of it. They would like to share this frequency along with the vehicle safety, and there's a big fight going on right now between NHTSA and FCC over this requirement. As an industry, we do not want to see it shared. Then, of course, cybersecurity. Whenever you start putting all these computers making decisions and talking to each other, you then have ports for people to be able to access your vehicle, and that's where hacker protection is paramount, and software updates will be required along with software ownership. Excuse me. Who owns the software? Who's allowed to make changes? And how proprietary is it? Will there be fees charged to someone, say, in a repair shop? These are all active items that are going on around under discussion, especially the hacker protection, because that's of paramount importance. You can imagine if you have millions of vehicles running around and someone is able to hack into them and cause them to take over the cars and drive them, that could be quite devastating. So that's high on the list of things that need to be solved. Next. And of course, this all leads to autonomous vehicles. I'm sure you've all heard of Google and their car, the Tesla cars, and other people. Lyft and Uber are now working with GM and Ford and Volvo. Google's been doing it for a number of years, testing. These are cars that drive themselves with no driver. Currently, some states allow testing to be done while a driver is in the vehicle, although not driving, but certainly there to take over in an emergency, as an example. Laws are being passed, though, that will allow testing without drivers in the vehicle. Big issues come along with that area as to insurance. Since there's no one driving, who's at fault? Is there insurance required? Who would you be insuring, if anyone? Who's responsible? Does the cost of an accident come back to the software provider, to the vehicle manufacturer, to the supplier who designed the code, to the repair shop that repaired the code or installed it incorrectly? Big open issues about liability. Timing, already this past week, Uber and Ford started doing driverless taxis in Pittsburgh on a pilot program. Going on in Singapore and China, in Europe and other cities in the U.S. where Google and other companies are doing this type of testing in the public. You probably heard about the Tesla crash in Florida, where Tesla has autopilot as an offering they do on their cars currently. The driver put it in autopilot. Of course, the car was driving, not him. And a semi-truck pulled out in front of him sideways, and the color of the sky matched the color of the side of the semi-truck trailer. The Tesla program could not differentiate between the sky and the truck, and so therefore drove straight into the semi, killing the driver. It's under investigation right now, and there, I think, has been one other crash in China with a Tesla vehicle and autopilot also. So it's moving very quickly, lots of open questions. The government is extremely excited and behind this. They view it as being a way to save lives because the computers will drive safer than people, in their opinion. Also will allow higher density use of our highways because computers can react to changes in speed in the traffic than a person can, so therefore you can have higher density traffic moving at a higher speed if computers are in charge. And so therefore they're very much excited and just brought out autonomous vehicle guidelines this past week. So it's moving very quickly, and it's going to be interesting because the cars will become more and more computerized, software controlled, and more interesting to repair, as an example. Next. I think that's my last slide. So I tried to do it quickly to keep in the time frame, but safety is evolving like crazy right now with all the new technologies, and unfortunately, in my opinion, players who are not have a history of auto safety, such as Verizon, Cisco, Google, all the telecoms, who download software, as you know, to your phones or your computers. Microsoft, the example, is a player. Don't really understand automotive safety, and so therefore we'll have a quick learning curve to go through. And so it's going to be an interesting time as we go through semi-autonomous and totally autonomous vehicles. My personal opinion is that you'll probably see autonomous vehicles more than likely in the Uber, Lyft, and taxi cab arena in urban settings first, where they would probably make the most and go from there. Barry, thank you very much. I'll be happy to answer questions at the appropriate time.
Thanks so much, Doug. And Doug, if you'll hang around a few minutes, we'll have questions at the end. Next, we are honored to have Pennsylvania State Representative Dean on our program today. Representative Dean was elected in 2012 to represent Pennsylvania's 153rd Legislative District. She brings with her nearly 3 decades of experience as an attorney, writer, and teacher. She served for 11 years as an assistant professor of English at LaSalle University in Philadelphia. In addition, Representative Dean is a writer and contributor to the Philadelphia Daily News and other publications. She practiced law in Philadelphia prior to teaching. She earned her undergraduate degree at LaSalle University in Philadelphia and enjoyed classes at Montgomery County Community College, her law degree at Widener University School of Law, and attended University of Pennsylvania Fell's Institute of Government. Within her role as state representative, Representative Dean sits on several important committees, including Appropriations, Judiciary, Policy, Ethics, and Finance, of which she is vice chairman. Representative Dean, thanks so much for joining us today. You've introduced an exciting bill in our industry that has a lot of value for consumers. Welcome.
Thank you so much for welcoming me. I just got on the call. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, terrific. Thank you very much for welcoming me and giving me that big introduction. And maybe what my bio doesn't reveal is that I am a car nut, an avid driver. So in my work here, I started thinking about what we ought to be doing as a result of, I guess, what came shockingly as the monstrous Takai airbag recall. What I wanted to say to you all is, first of all, thanks for having me on the call. Thanks for supporting this notion and this legislation. And I know that you asked of me to say, why did I come up with this legislation? And I really came up with it just because of my interest in consumer protection and my interest in consumer information. From my own personal experience with these recalls, I was sort of surprised that in the door of my house, I got 2 different notices of recalls for 2 different manufacturers, both on the airbag on cars that I had, one an older car and one a newer car. And the approach of the manufacturers in giving me the notification was very different. In one letter, it was very bold and glaring and identifying for me that the recall was important and serious, and the other, it looked like a very boilerplate, uninteresting piece of mail. I followed up and called my dealers and looked into, whether or not my car or my truck in one case was subject to the recall, and found that they were. So it just seemed to me that for consumer convenience and to make sure that consumers have the information, it might make sense and be very easy to implement that at the time of automobile inspection, as required here in Pennsylvania each year, that the inspection agent perform the VIN recall search as part of the inspection process, simply to provide information, not to fail the inspection, but to provide information to the consumer.
Thank you, Representative Dean, and hope you or your legislative team will be able to remain on the line in case we have questions that follow our next panelist.
Terrific.
It's my pleasure to introduce Taylor Hill of Larson's Automotive in Peabody, Massachusetts. Taylor has been in the automotive industry at Larson Service since 2011. Taylor began as a technician's apprentice, then moved to service writing and administrative work. In 2013, Taylor received her first ASA certification, a C1 service consultant. In July of 2015, graduated with her automotive management degree and is currently working on her master's. Taylor is currently manager of Larson's Service. She is an active member of several program advisory councils, and Taylor is a popular speaker for student groups in the automotive repair industry, and specifically about the endless opportunities that our industry has for students. Taylor, we are so glad to have you, and please share your views from the independent repair perspective.
Thank you very much. Here in Massachusetts, we do yearly state inspections, and we find it to be incredibly important, mainly because now we have the knowledge of everyone being safer in their vehicles. Some of the main things that we actually check for would be brake operation for like your e-brake, the stopping ability, the pedal, the power, exhaust, steering and suspension is very much a big one, making sure that there's no play in any of your ball joints or the tie rod ends or anything like that. Suspension as far as shocks being blown out or springs being broken. Horns, lighting devices, tires, wheels. And a big thing here in Massachusetts is due to rust. So we check for frame damage, a lot of things such as brake and fuel lines, things like that. Obviously, all of these things are very important because we don't see as many vehicles breaking down on the side of the road with their wheels falling off, or causing blowouts from having poor tires. We check tread depth regularly to make sure that that's within the specs. We fail you at anything more than 2 seconds, or less, rather. And then also check the front end to make sure that there's no play in any of the vital components that helps hold your wheel on or keep the stability of the vehicle from steering off. Something that we do here differently, we run a maintenance program at our shop, and every vehicle that we have that comes in, we actually check to see if there's any safety recalls on any of the vehicles. There's actually a website called safercard.gov that you can go on, and you can put the VIN number in on any of the vehicles, and it will tell you whether or not there's an open recall on it for safety concerns, or if it's free and clear and it's been taken care of. So we actually do that on top of everything else as far as making sure that our vehicles are good to go as far as according to our Mass State inspections. So, we find that everything having to do with our state inspections is incredibly important, just for the peace of mind of our clients and also ourselves as being operators of vehicles, just to make sure that we know that the vehicles on the road are safe for us to be on.
Thank you, Taylor. And if you can hang on with us just a few minutes, we have a brief video that's an overview of the Texas Safety Inspection Program. We want to thank our friends in advance at Kenny's Automotive in Hurst, Texas, for taking the time out of their day to do the video. And please note, this is a snapshot of a Texas vehicle safety inspection. The video is not comprehensive, and certain segments have been abbreviated due to time constraints. Okay, let's hear from Kenny's Automotive. think we are having a little trouble with the audio. And we're working on that. Well, while they're working on the video, why don't we go to questions? And we've got a couple of questions that have already come in on cybersecurity and also on a couple of other issues. Doug, the first question is for you. State and federal governments are both interested in cybersecurity. Who should regulate, states or the federal government?
Well, our opinion is that the federal government needs to set guidelines or rules about cybersecurity because it's such a integrated concept that's going to be on every vehicle that state-to-state regulations would cause a real problem from a manufacturer's standpoint or a supplier's standpoint because it's just too wide open and there needs to be a singular way to do it. Now, the counter to that, of course, is that if you have one system and someone can hack it, then you're into everything. But to have state-to-state regulations, we think would be very difficult to manage the manufacturing and design of vehicles because they would require too much complexity to even begin to comply.
Thanks, Doug. Representative Dean, we've got a couple of questions from Pennsylvania asking how repairers and technicians can help moving your bill. What can they do as citizens to assist in your legislation?
Hi, this is Co, actually, from Representative Dean's office. I'm her legislative director. Unfortunately, she got called back into session. We're here in Harrisburg today, so she asked that I could field any of the questions. As far as as far as helping move this legislation forward, this is currently in the Transportation Committee. This legislative session, there are only 7 days left, so moving this forward this session would be very difficult. So we are going to be refocusing our efforts moving forward, but we are going to reintroduce this in the spring, and we are urging anybody who is a stakeholder to contact the chairs of the Transportation Committee where this legislation will sit to say and let the chairman know that this is an important piece of legislation that is consumer protection worthy and also is not, it's a simple and not inconvenient fix that will help Pennsylvanians throughout. So if I don't know if anybody is on an email list or anything like that, but I would be happy to send information to the about the chairman of the committee, so that if you're preparing letters or calling or anything like that, that would be very helpful. Just for reference, the House Bill number is House Bill 2297. So if you want to get a head start and let the chairman of the Pennsylvania Transportation Committee know that you are in support of this legislation, that would be the bill to reference, House Bill 2297.
Thanks so much, Co. And just as a reminder for repairers that we have the legislation on our legislative website, www.takingthehill.com, and if you'll look under Pennsylvania, you'll see it there, and it will allow you to learn more about the bill too. So thanks so much, Co. We've got a number of questions coming in from states that do not have programs, any kind of vehicle safety and program. And Taylor, I hope maybe you can help here some with this question. It said, how can I get a state inspection program implemented in my state? It's scary to see some of the vehicles leave our facility. There's nothing we can do other than make the customer aware of it.
Well, I'm not entirely certain. I mean, if it's not implemented, I don't know how to get that implemented into the state. But I mean, obviously, just continue to educate your clients until that does go through. I mean, here at our shop, we actually still go a little bit above and beyond what we do in Massachusetts, but it's all based off of how we educate our clients in order to let them realize what the safety concerns are. And it's unfortunate that they don't have safety inspections in that state, but as long as you can clearly talk to these people, it's all about common sense. You know, if you can show them a reason why it should be done and explain to them why it needs to be done for safety reasons, I mean, you can definitely at least can help get the ball rolling and get people educated and make them want other people to be safer on the road, and maybe kind of get people more involved in maybe starting it up in your state.
Thanks, Taylor. Doug, NHTSA recently published a guidance document for autonomous vehicles. What's really involved with that, and is that just a precursor to future regulation, or what's going to happen with these cars?
Well, they put out the guidelines because they're trying to come up with some type of general standardization going forward so that rules of engagement are understood. But it's just a guideline. You can still do anything you want, quite frankly. They are, NHTSA, unfortunately, with their staffing issues and budget issues, are really behind the curve when it comes to knowledge on these new technologies, and are struggling to keep up, and so therefore they don't feel capable of regulating at this time. But their hope is that through these guidelines and through industry participation and sharing of information, that they will become more able to regulate in the future. So it's one of those things where they're trying to catch up, you got to keep the ball rolling, and trying to not impede progress while they go through this learning curve, because that's one of the concerns, is that we're still so early into it. There's a lot of different avenues that can be pursued in order to do autonomous vehicles, and they don't want to dissuade those paths being followed. But then eventually, much like any technology, they would try to regulate it so that there is some commonality and some teeth into the regulatory piece of it that would require certain basic aspects to be included in any system. So right now, they're just buying time, quite frankly, until they can come up with regulations in the future.
Well, back to the recall question. Why are there no time constraints for completion of recalls which can affect motor vehicle safety inspections?
Well, you know, this is one of the problems that has really come to light with the Takata recall. We've always had a problem with public participation in recalls. I think it's as low as maybe like 38% of recalled vehicles ever come back and get repaired, something like that from a historical standpoint. And of course, with something as critical as the Takata one, where literally the airbag explodes and throws shrapnel into the occupant compartment, they really want 100% compliance if at all possible. And NHTSA has been very stunned at the fact that even with the dire warnings, there's been campaigns, like the Congresswoman said, she's gotten 2 different notices. They're trying to standardize the notices to put the fear of God into you if you get one like this. And even then, people are not responding. The Takata participation rate is still quite low, around 20% nationwide. I think the highest one is maybe 30% with Honda in Florida. So there is no, you can't put a time constraint on it because there's no enforcement provision. All you can do is inform the public that they should take action on their vehicle. There's nothing you can do to cause them to do it. You don't put them in jail or fine them or penalize them not doing something to their own car. There's nothing like that on the books. So you're at the mercy of the public taking action to protect themselves. And so the most they're doing now is to try to educate the public as many times and as best they can to take action, all the way to the fact of NHTSA has been encouraging the car companies to offer free oil changes or tire rotations or other kinds of services to an owner to bring their car in to get the Takata airbag replaced, as an example, because they're trying to come up with incentives to get people to respond. So it's a difficult question, but there is no time limits because there's no enforcement possibility.
Well, and you mentioned this a little bit, Doug, in your comments, and this really would be tailored for you and Taylor. on the hacking. Are today's vehicles easy to hack? We saw recently a letter from House Energy and Commerce Chairman Fred Upton of Michigan to NHTSA about a Jeep being hacked through the OBD2 port. What do you think? Are these cars, as sophisticated as they are, still easy to hack?
Unfortunately, they are still hackable. We have the first famous recall was Chrysler because people were able to hack through their radio in order to gain control of the car. They never did it, and then they published how they did it, so that caused a recall to be done. Cars have a lot of access ports to them today from the standpoint of all the different chips and control systems they have on them, and so cars today can be hacked. A lot of them, though, don't have the equipment that controls features like automatic emergency braking or electronic stability control, or certainly ones they could get into and cause the vehicle to do an unintended action today. Most don't have lane keeping where the car steers itself, but when they will get it, that's another site. So, yes, cars are hackable today, and those that are good at hacking don't have trouble doing it.
Taylor?
I agree with that. I mean, in today's world, it is definitely pretty hard to keep people out in the electronic world. As far as like actually hacking, I mean, I obviously haven't seen anything, but I mean, I feel like, I mean, obviously it's never going to go away. So it is just something that we're going to have to deal with and kind of stay on top of. Because unfortunately there are always people out there smart enough, and if they're willing to try and figure something out, they can get into something. So, I mean, unfortunately, we just have to be aware of it and try and take it as it is.
Thank you. What about several questions have come in about training. These vehicles are so sophisticated and technology moving very quickly. And the questioner said, I can't keep up and my team can't keep up with all the new technologies. What do we do about training? Are we going to be totally reliant on the OEMs? Taylor, maybe that's would be good coming maybe first from you. What do you think about training?
Training, we are all about training. Any kind of classes, conventions, anything that we can actually get our hands on, that we can further our education and keep up to date with all of these newer vehicles, with all the reprogramming and the computers and everything that you have to learn. It's constantly changing. So in order to actually stay relevant in this business, it's something that needs to continue. And we are definitely firm believers in being able to stay on top of all of these different things by getting as much education as we possibly can. You don't just become a master tech and stay that way 20 years later, you know? So,
right.
So it is definitely something that is hugely beneficial, and I think that anybody that can get to it should. I think everybody needs to be open to the idea of staying trained in order to be able to keep up with this constantly changing. I mean, I've only been in the industry for, you know, since 2011, and it's already drastically changed since I started. So, I mean, I can't even imagine trying to keep up with it by not going and training and going to these classes.
Well, Co, this may be our last question. What's the best way to educate consumers and policymakers about the value of mandatory inspections? What can our industry do to help with educating consumers and policymakers on this issue?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Sure.
I'm having a little trouble hearing you.
What's the best way from a legislative policymaker perspective that our industry can help educate consumers and policymakers about the value of state inspections for vehicles?
Well, Pennsylvania has, as Representative Dean mentioned, an annual inspection that keeps vehicles on the road just simply much safer than they are in surrounding states. Some other states I know they have biannual or every 2 years, and some have no inspection, I believe, at all. I mean, this really goes down to contacting your state legislators and asking that this become a required annual inspection. I think that it's important to do this annually and incorporate this recall inspection idea into anything that's passed in your state. It's just simply a fact that these cars do get run down. There are people on the road that will not get their vehicles fixed unless they need to. And you see tires in Pennsylvania. You see tires on the side of the road from blowouts all the time, and we have this annual recall or annual inspection. So I mean, it really comes down to a life or death thing. These vehicles are used on a daily basis, but they are dangerous. I mean, they are one of the highest fatality accident sources of accidental deaths in the U.S. And anything that you can do to try and make sure that is avoided. Obviously, some things are accidents and cannot be avoided, but things like blowouts and people stranded on the side of the road, getting hit by cars, those are things that are avoidable. And Pennsylvania has been a leader in that, and we're trying to continue to update our legislation and our requirements so that we continue to do so. And if anyone is looking to model their state legislation after Pennsylvania, feel free to contact our office. We'll be happy to get you in touch with Department of Transportation here and let you know how it was passed in Pennsylvania. And we'd be happy to have this become a something done in every state. This is something that also could be done, I suppose, at the national level, but it seems to be that it's more easily passed state to state. And so starting there, and hopefully one day we will get to the point where it's mandated throughout the U.S.
Thank you, Co. Taylor, I did have, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so from my perspective, I deal a lot with the state and federal governments, and what I have found when you want to talk to someone about enacting a type of regulation of any kind is that you go in with facts and data to prove your case and not just be all talks. In other words, if you can compare states with inspection procedures against states who do not have it and show the difference in fatality rates or other kinds of things, if you can show a cost-benefit ratio of the enactment cost versus what the benefit would be, those are the kind of things that legislators can use to defend their position or motivate them to take action because they have concrete facts and data in order to base their opinion and not just talking about it. So that would be my recommendation to you.
Thank you, Doug. I did have one last question. This was a follow-up on the earlier training question. And Taylor, this one is for you. What kinds of tools do you use in your shop to help stay educated with all of these new changes? Websites, training programs. This is someone, I think, searching for how to stay at the head of the spear.
Well, in our area, we have a lot of our parts providers that have a lot of local classes. There's a training, endless training on on websites and going on and doing a lot of webinars like this and different training classes there. There's also conventions that you can travel to that have really great training throughout the country. So I mean, there's endless you just kind of have to reach out there and look for it and find out what the best places for you are going to be. Kind of reach out to your parts providers or like the see if they offer any kind of training in the area. If not, look online to a lot of different places because even if they're not holding local classes in that area, a lot of those companies are also doing website training. And then obviously, like I said, if you have the means to try and get out to some conventions to be able to try and interact and meet with other, industry leaders at some of these conventions and everything is always really beneficial. it's out there. You just really kind of have to look for it and find what your niche is, whether or not it's better for you to be doing online training or if it's going to be going to a class and really mingling and being able to talk things out with other people.
Thank you, Taylor. And thank you, Doug, Representative Dean, Cove, and Taylor for participating today. We really enjoyed this and know our participants did. For attendees, we will send you a YouTube link within the next day or so to view the shop demo. Thank you so much for joining ASA's webinar on automotive safety inspection and new safety technologies. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.